Have you ever looked at someone in their 40s and thought they've got everything figured out now? Stable job, family, responsibilities under control, life seemingly on track. But what if I told you that behind that calm face, there's a silent psychological collapse happening that almost no one talks about? A kind of invisible life crisis that doesn't look like chaos, but feels like suffocation from the inside. No breakdowns on the outside, no dramatic failures. Just a quiet internal question repeating every night. Is this really it? And the strangest part, most people don't even realize they're in it until they're already deep inside it. Now think about this. When you were younger, you imagined your 40s as a kind of arrival point. Success, clarity, confidence, a life that finally makes sense. But for many Gen X individuals, reality hits differently. Instead of arrival, it feels like repetition. Wake up, work, responsibilities, sleep, repeat. And somewhere in between, the sense of me starts fading. Not in a dramatic way, but slowly, like a photograph losing color over time. And nobody around you notices because on the surface, everything still looks fine. And that's what makes this crisis so dangerous. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't destroy your life, it drains it. You still show up to work. You still pay bills. You still laugh at the right moments. But inside, something feels disconnected, like you are living someone else's life on autopilot. And here's the real question. How do you fight a crisis that doesn't even look like a crisis? Let's go deeper. Imagine a man in his 40s sitting in his car outside his house after work, engine off. Silence. But he doesn't go inside immediately. Why? Because inside means responsibilities, noise, expectations. Instead, he just sits there scrolling through memories in his mind. Not because something is wrong today, but because today feels exactly like yesterday. And yesterday feels like last year. And that realization hits harder than any failure ever could. Psychologists call this a midlife transition. But that sounds too clean, too clinical. In reality, it feels like emotional confusion wrapped in routine. You start questioning decisions you made 15 or 20 years ago, the career path you chose, the relationships you stayed in, the dreams you quietly abandoned because life got practical. And now, in your 40s, those forgotten versions of you start knocking again. Not loudly, but persistently. And here's where it gets even more complicated. Because on the outside, Gen X is often seen as the stable generation, the responsible one, the one that held everything together while others struggled. But internally, that stability often came at a cost. Emotional suppression, delayed dreams, silent compromises. And now, those unpaid emotional debts are finally coming due, not in chaos, but in emptiness. You might notice it in small things first, losing interest in things you once enjoyed, feeling tired even after rest. Not sadness exactly, but numbness. And the most dangerous part, you start normalizing it. You tell yourself, this is just adulthood. But is it really adulthood, or is it quiet resignation? Now imagine this shift happening over years. Not days, not weeks, years. One day you realize you don't recognize your own thoughts anymore. You're not excited about the future because you've stopped imagining one. You're not angry about the past because you've accepted it. You're just existing in the middle. And that middle starts feeling endless. But here's a question that changes everything. What if this isn't the end of purpose, but a signal that something inside you has been ignored for too long? Because in many cases, this invisible crisis isn't about losing life. It's about losing alignment. The person you became doesn't fully match the person you still are inside. Think about the roles people in their 40s carry. Parent, partner, employee, provider, caretaker. Each role slowly builds layers over identity, and over time, the original self gets buried under responsibilities. Not destroyed, just buried. And every now and then, it tries to resurface through restlessness, irritability, or that strange feeling of something is missing, but I don't know what. And this is where many people make a mistake. They think the solution is a big change. Quit the job, move cities, start over. But often, the real issue isn't the external life. It's the internal disconnect. Because you can change your environment, but if you don't reconnect with yourself, the same emptiness follows you everywhere. Let's talk about time for a moment. In your 20s, time feels unlimited. In your 30s, it feels structured. But in your 40s, time becomes visible. You start counting not just years ahead, but years behind. And that awareness can create pressure. A silent pressure that says, did I use my time well? And that question can either awaken you or quietly drain you. Now picture a different scene. A woman in her 40s sitting alone in a kitchen after everyone has gone to sleep. House is quiet. She scrolls through old photos on her phone, smiling versions of herself from years ago. And for a brief moment, she doesn't feel sad. She feels distant from herself, like she's looking at someone she used to know very well. And yet, life doesn't stop. That's the hardest part. The world keeps moving. Kids grow up, work continues, bills arrive, responsibilities multiply. But internally, something is asking for attention. Something that has been ignored for too long. And the longer it's ignored, the quieter life feels. Not peaceful, but muted. So what is this invisible life crisis really about? It's not failure. It's not depression in the traditional sense. It's a psychological awakening disguised as emptiness, a moment where the mind starts demanding honesty, not about what you've achieved, but about whether any of it still feels meaningful to you. And here's the twist most people never expect. This crisis isn't just an ending. For many, it's the beginning of something more honest. Because once the illusion of autopilot life breaks, you finally have a choice: to continue unchanged, or to slowly rebuild connection with yourself again, not through dramatic escape, but through awareness. And maybe that's the real message hidden inside this invisible crisis. It doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to wake you up. Quietly, uncomfortably, honestly. And it asks you one final question that you can no longer ignore. Are you living your life? Or just living your role? Because once you hear that question clearly, there's no going back to sleep.